When I first started, I guess, not freelancing but working full-time in the industry, I worked at a games company that's no longer around, but so they had me animating characters and modelling them and sort of doing sort of stuff like that, and basically, so then I went on from there to join Animal Logic as an animator as well, and I think from the years of having a background as working on my own as a freelancer, you sort of get you wire things up a bit differently because you sort of have to. You get things done different ways. You don't do it all in one program. You flit it around a little bit just because you know this software does that one thing good, this one does that one good. So you try and get the job done by patching things together like that. And when I started at Animal, they sort of noticed I was able to, get my way through things like that. So they were like, actually, don't do the work. Step away and show everybody else how to do what you do, sort of thing. And they pitched the story to us, asking if Animal Logic could help figure out with Kennedy Miller Mitchell how to do the effects in the show in Happy Feet to make it look realistic. And it was a great week of experts coming from all shapes and sizes, experts in motion capture, experts in CG, which was us, experts in Antarctic photography and biologists and geologists and whatnot, and George and all his crew as well, sort of talking about how Antarctica was formed and the different bits of the ice and how that all worked. And anyway, so we'd sort of spent this week discovering what he wanted to do and then trying to answer how we might do it in each quarter. And then at the end of that, just sort of over lunch one day, he walked past and he said, look, just out of all the Animal Logic guys, if anyone was going to go to Antarctica, which you won't, but if anyone would, have to go down to help the guys, who would it be? And everyone sort of leant in and was looking at each other, and I thought, oh, okay. Put my hand up, and George went, you would? And I said, well, who wouldn't? And he said, well, I wouldn't. But anyway, it's just a question. So from that, then he got me to help set up some tests. We went to the South Island of New Zealand and practiced on a glacier there. And anyway, so we got stuck on the glacier one night, first time in recorded history. Apparently they've lost a troop, or not lost, but someone had to stay on the thing for the night. And then from there, they thought, well, he didn't panic, he did well, so they ended up 2 weeks before they went to Antarctica, dragged into the owner's office at Animal and asked, would I like to go to Antarctica? And I said, are you crazy? Of course I would. Stop messing with me. And he said, well, no, you need to go now and get measured up and kitted up and everything because you're going in 2 weeks. It was, we spent 3 months there on 2 separate trips, one that was 4 weeks and the other one that was 2 months, taking photos, trying to photograph and motion, basically do some live action photography, helicopter flying over the place. So we sort of get a feel for what it looks like in reality. And the reason they sent the whole troop of people down there initially was, I think it's just hard to find exactly what you need. So for a place like Animal Logic, we need some pretty decent coverage by a photographer of different features to understand how they're made, to be able to replicate it. And they sort of thought, I guess at the last minute, that we better send someone down there that knows what they want. And so my job was basically down there teaching all the photographers and whatever how to get the coverage that we would be able to then use when we started making the movie. So we went down to Antarctica. They didn't have basically enough room to sort of, or didn't hire a huge boat that could have a plane on it and all of this sort of stuff, which was sort of what we needed because we did do a lot of flying. So they bought the smallest helicopter they could that would be practical and dismantled it and packed it all up neatly on the deck of the boat until we got down to Antarctica, and then they said about half a day it took them to put it all back together again, and just things like there's like amazing amounts of innovation in just getting the camera rig and everything on there, and then also sort of I think it was 2002 when we headed down there, so the state of software and laser scanning and all this sort of stuff was really in its infancy for this industry. And so we took laser scanners and things down there, but they didn't sort of really return quite as much as we thought. The accuracy wasn't quite right because lasers don't work that well on ice. Who'd have thought? Anyway, we basically sort of then had to, when we got that data back, once we had gotten back to Sydney and everything, we sort of realised that, we thought we'd get a lot of scan data that would help us build a lot of Antarctica, and in fact we got nothing worth speaking of, but we had a couple of the guys that were so good at modelling that we'd give them these nice coverage of all the things, and they just sort of go about plotting and building the shapes and then reprojecting everything back on them from our photos, and then so where we thought we might have automatically got all this stuff out of scanning, ended up it was quicker to get people to model it by hand. But yeah, and I mean the rest of the project itself, there was, we thought we had a piece of software to control the crowd, and we thought that that would be wonderful for all the dancing, but that we just couldn't make it work to keep things in time because its natural tendency was to give you randomness, which is what a crowd is. So to enable us to do that, we were sort of fighting against the software for ages till one of the lead programmers had sort of thought about it a while himself and sort of came up with this system where we just fed in one animated penguin, and he multiplied it out 400 or 500 times, and then put this sort of unbelievably sort of simple yet very effective time shift over them all, so they weren't all exact copies and they didn't sort of stay the same amount out of sync the whole time, and basically so we set this one canned demo up for George to have a look at just before Christmas, and he said, "That's my Christmas present. There it is. Now we can make the penguins dance." And and it was from he sort of had to pull together a little bit of games technology, a little bit of crowd technology, and just a little bit of, well, hang on, we've got these tools and we want this result, and sort of so the innovation itself is. Can be one individual that comes up with things like that, but then really where that tool set ended up going to allow us to do conga line dancing and all these different patterns and Mexican waves and things in there were, again, innovations laid on top of that system by other people who were using it. So we do a number of things during a production like Happy Feet 2. We sort of have lots of stand-up meetings. Stand-up meetings are good for getting people to think on their feet. If they're sitting down or if they're looking at their phone, they're not really kind of engaged with the conversation. So having people sort of, these stand-up meetings, we'd have them all over the building for the research and development team, for different teams like the lighting team and the animation team and whatnot. And you just get stuff out of people a lot more, and it's usually those one-off comments that come out of people that sort of spark, others into coming up with a better way of solving problems. So it's kind of, while I say it's not planned, it's something you hope for all the way through, that people are going to come up with these innovative ideas all the way through, because you know that the plan you make on day one is sort of probably only about 10% of it left by the time you get to the finish line, because you've had to do so many course corrections along the way.